Alright. Alright. Buenos dias. Es 5 de mayo. Es la hora de sketch y coffee con Blade. Es 5:30 en la madrugada. Ojalá que estás bien. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is 5 de Mayo. It is 5:30 in the morning. That means it is time for sketching and coffee. So here we are, sketching and coffee. Sketching and coffeeing. You know what? I installed some new cameras, and I spent a very long time making sure everything was set up so that I wouldn't have to fight with them during the broadcast. And sure enough, the first thing I noticed is one of the cameras is not where it's supposed to be. But please let me know in the chat if there's anything amiss, if there's anything that isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. This ship, all the information that Safari put on this morning was that it was a ship. On the bottom it just says ship. And I spent way too much time last night learning that it's a bark schooner. Because it has 2 full masts and a aft sail on the mizzen mast. I spent way too much time last night going down the rabbit hole on that nonsense, because with it being Cinco de Mayo, and the fact that this thing is called a bark schooner, I started looking up the etymology of bark schooners. The history of sailing. I mean, the rabbit hole just never ends. The internet is full of entirely too much information for people like me. And that's saying something. Because I want to know it all. I want to know all of it. I don't only want to know that it's something. I want to know why it's something. Oh, I didn't get rid of the old cameras, Dad. I don't even. I'm actually using every one of them, because the only one that I took out of service as a camera I'm using as a microphone. My dad's in the chat saying, I want your old cameras. I would happily give you my cameras, but I didn't get rid of any of them. I just repurposed them. I bought one new one about one new one and repurposed the other ones. Alright, that's pretty good for the composition. But hopefully it's a lot less blurry than it was before. This is too long. Can't talk, Harding. I started downloading the music yesterday, and it didn't take very long before it decided to tell me that I had downloaded too much of it in a 24-hour period. So we'll have to go without music today until I can finish downloading it. It doesn't like the streaming, and I don't want it to be a distraction. I want it to be something to enhance our experience. So anyway, back to what I was saying. I thought it was really interesting, really interesting. I'm actually too young to know who Ed Sullivan was, but I thought it was really interesting that this is called a bark schooner, and it's spelled B-A-R-Q-U-E on purpose because they wanted to differentiate between the sound or the skin of a tree and the type of boat this is. So they spelled it different, which for the English language, if you study the English language at all, you understand just exactly how unusual it is that they even considered that there would be confusion, because usually they're just like, oh yeah, and this word means this too. And we're going to spell it this way this time, but if you use it in this manner, we're going to spell it the same, but we're going to pronounce it differently. I mean, that's the typical English thing, right? Now, this is a prime example of making sure that I'm drawing what I see and not what I think is there, because this is a toy. Those sails have thickness. Instead of just being sheet thin, they have thickness to them, and so they're casting shadows on their edges. And I have to remember to include the shadows on their edges. But the more interesting thing about this being a bark schooner, to me, the more interesting thing about this being a bark schooner is just how common the word bark is for a boat. Because in Spanish, the Spanish word of the day is barco, for a boat or a ship. El barco. And so when I started researching where the etymology, where the word barco comes from and where the word bark comes from, it is very convoluted. It is not as straightforward as this country started it and this country adopted it, because we have been using barcos for at least 10,000 years. The oldest fossil, the oldest boat that they have found in the fossil record is around 10,000 years old, and it's in the Netherlands. And it's a hollowed out tree trunk probably used to navigate the marshes and rivers of the Netherlands 10,000 years ago. And that's fascinating to me. Fascinating to me. They have evidence of shipping lanes. They have records of shipping lanes from the Egyptians. Some 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. So where did the word come from? And it's like the Egyptian word was baris, and so the Greeks kind of adopted that and made some changes to it and made it barik. But it moved into Latin from the Celtics, who call it a bark. A boat. It was a bark. Because when it came time for shipping in the world, the Vikings just jumped all over that, and they moved all throughout Northern Europe. The Vikings were all about it. And so they spread the terminology. But where did it start? Did the Egyptians call it a baris before the Celtics? Celtics. It's Celtics. Where did it start? And you know that they were using reed rafts and canoes, because they were populating Hawaii 10,000 years ago. So you know they were using boats to sail the oceans, but the language of it is not as well preserved as the boats themselves, and the boats aren't even all that well preserved. Very, very few boats made it to, fossilization or any kind of preservation, because they were just, reeds. I feel like this is too round. I mean, I feel like it should be round, but I feel like it's too round. I don't know. I have to play with that a little bit. Anyway, I know I'm rambling about boats and stuff, but those are the kinds of rabbit holes. And again, it started with me wanting to know what kind of ship this was, because Safari just called it a ship. Safari didn't call it a bark or a schooner. Safari Limited is the toy maker that made this particular toy. And on the bottom of the toy it says ship. And so that sent me down a rabbit hole, as it does. Alright, we need to make sure we've got room out here for this shadow. If I come straight off of this should come straight into that flag shadow. And this shadow should come straight down through here. Hi, Claudia. Claudia's having an extra free day because Liberation Day. Actually, Claudia, were you here when we were talking about the oldest preserved boat in the world? Is a 10,000-year-old carved out wooden canoe in the Netherlands? But you probably already know all that. Do 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 do. She put a little boat in the chat. It's the cutest little boat ever. But yeah, we were talking about the history of sailing and boats and the terminology for the word bark, and the rabbit hole that I went down last night Trying to find out what kind of ship this was. And it's a bark schooner. And why is it called a schooner? And why is it particularly a bark schooner? And in true chicken and the egg fashion, we wanted to know which came first, the bark or the barco, because in Spanish it is el barco. That is too thick. For those of you who don't know, Claudia is in the Netherlands. She is a Netherlander. And she is our resident Dutch expert. So when I have, and amazingly, it's amazing to me how often Dutch trivia has come up in our little conversations. It's very interesting to me because we have a resident Nederlander that can answer those questions. I missed the music already, but I can't have it being a distraction like it was. We will get it worked out. I did download quite a bit of it, about 80 songs, enough to get us a good mix. We use those particular songs because they're royalty free. They're not free. It's a service I pay for. But I won't get gigged on YouTube for using them. And that's the important part to me, is not being gigged on YouTube. So we will have to get that worked out, because obviously we can't just not have music. And I can't add music post-production because it is a live stream. That's part of the problem right there, is that should be more that way. Aha. Aha. Can't talk. Artie. Alright. What differentiates this from this? this should be a little darker, and then this whole side will be shaded. When we're done, we'll shade the whole side. So now let's move on to the shadows. Let's move on to the drop shadow. I have to be careful not to move around because I can get entirely too much shadow. If I move my head over this way, I'll get entirely too much shadow. I have to make sure that I stay in the perspective that I was. I always made fun of viewfinders. I always thought, you know, why would you use it? You know, it also matters which eye I have open. My mom's laughing. It's a lot of detail for a Monday. I know, it's already 5 till 6, and we're just not getting to the drop shadow. A lot of detail for a Monday. It matters which eye I have open as to where that shadow goes. And because I have so many sketch lines out there, it will be very easy to sketch the wrong line, to fill in the wrong shadow. So I have to be especially careful, because I have to leave some of the lines so I can see where they are in relation to each other, because that's what part of those lines are, is showing me the relationship to each other. But I also need to know where the actual shadow is, or not. It's a sketch. It's a Monday morning sketch on Cinco de Mayo, which I think is funny because it's a holiday that nobody in Mexico really cares about. It's French. It's the day they threw off the French government, and a region of Mexico declared independence from part of France. Nobody in the U.S. knows that either. All we know is that margaritas are discounted today. And so we celebrate discounted margarita day. I'd say it's like St. Patrick's Day, but St. Patrick's Day is really a religious holiday, and it's really celebrated in Ireland. So you can't really compare it to St. Patrick's Day, but you can compare it to the way the U.S. celebrates St. Patrick's Day, because I'm here to tell you very, very few people consider St. Patrick's Day in the U.S. consider St. Patrick's Day a religious holiday. It's Green Beer Day. Okay, I have a lot of lines to clean up there, or that is never going to make sense. My mother votes for the next sketch pad to be pen and ink. So far she's the only vote, so pen and ink is winning. The options are continue with pencil, pen and ink, watercolor, charcoal, and crayon. I'm open to any of those and all of those. We can continue small. We can move up in size to as large as 8.5 by 11, but I can tell you that part of the charm of this, part of the reason we're able to do this, is because we're keeping it small so that it will go quickly. My dogs are really excited about going outside. My wife is not happy about having to get up and take them out. I can hear her. I'm looking at this trying to figure out if this white on the sails is whiter than the white on the paper, and I'm not convinced that it is, but yeah, I guess it is just a little bit. So we'll need to tone the paper behind it so that the sails read white, but we also need to add some form to the sails because they are not flat. And flags are not white at all. Somehow I moved. That flag is not where it was. Somehow I've moved. At some point in this process I moved. But it's alright, it's an easy fix. We're using 4B pencil so it erases easily. And it absolutely matters which eye I'm looking out of as to where that shadow is. It's also possible that I shaded in a stray line. What? Does that happen? Yes. Yes, it does. It's why we try to be careful with line management. Take care of the stray lines early and often. Okay, so now, oh, Claudia's voting watercolor. We're going to need some tie votes here. We've got several weeks. I'd say everybody gets a vote a day, but I think if we did that, pretty sure my mom would win that one because she's the only one that's here every day, Saturday and Sunday included. Oh, but you know what? She wasn't here yesterday, so my dad may end up casting the deciding vote. That was a little dig on my mom. I know she feels really bad about not making it yesterday. right now the vote's watercolor. 1 for watercolor, 1 for pen and ink. Oh, you know what? We didn't even consider ink and wash, which would be both watercolor and watercolor and ink. Didn't even consider that. Alright, let's tone the paper just so that the flags read, just so that the sails read white. I'm going to scumble this time, which means I'm going to go back and forth instead of just in one direction. I'm trying to go very, very lightly. But I want to go over everything except the sails. That way the sails read super white. Another thing about not putting as much detail on the shadow, I can go in and put all the detail I want in the shadow, but the more detail I put in the shadow, the more it makes the shadow the focus of the drawing, and I don't want the shadow to become the focus of the drawing. So your detail should go where you want people to look. You want enough detail that people can look at it and say, yeah, that's that toy that was on his desk. But not so much detail that you're still here at 8 o'clock and you were supposed to be at work at 7. Oh, mixed media is a different thing, Mother. Mixed media, I mean, ink and wash is one thing, but mixed media, that's acrylic, that's glitter. There's cleanup involved in that. I'm not sure I want to go that route. But where's your sense of adventure? about to call this one, because if I don't, I will still be here at 8 o'clock and I have to go to work, because it's 10 after 6. So I'm calling this one. I know it's ink and wash is two things mixed, so it's already mixed media. But what is today? Cinco de Mayo, 05. When people say mixed media, they have a very specific intent. And let's see. There. That's about what I was looking at. Well, I got that shadowed. I could have spent some more time on that shadow for sure. Let's see. Actually, I think this actually gave us a better view. Except it doesn't focus. Why doesn't it focus? Where is the focus? Why isn't it focusing? Let's go back to that one then. Does that one focus? There, that focused for us. So there we go. That is our coffee and sketch of the day. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. You know, I look forward to it every morning. I truly do. I look forward to it every morning. We'll keep the vote going. We've got ink and wash because Claudia and my mother have joined forces now. So, and so ink and wash is the current winner for the vote for the next sketchbook. But the vote is early, so vote early, vote often. Which way to go next time? We've got probably till the end of May, and then probably somewhere around the beginning of June is when we'll be moving on to the next sketchbook. So be sure and keep joining us. Claudia gave me an 8.5 out of 10, and all I can see is little Olympian judges holding the little signs up, and me going. All right, guys, thank you so much. Mwah. And Claudia says, have a great discount margarita day. Ink and wash is going to be when Patricia and I think so. And now a little dance. And we dance until somebody says they see me dancing. It's hard to dance with no music. I have the music going on in my head, but you know, not everybody is in my head most of the time.